All right, we're live. Hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we're back now. So today I'm joined by Jessica. We met over Twitter. We got into kind of a bit of an exchange over the topic of race relations, the state of the black community today, specifically African Americans. It's a very touchy subject, and I guess right off the bat, I want to say that I'm not black. All right, and some people might feel like, who's this white-looking guy talking about black people as if he knows what blacks are going through? I've heard a lot of people say that before. You're not black. You have no jurisdiction or rights talking about what we're going through, which I think is kind of silly, because the same people who tell me that are the same people who talk all day about white privilege and they're focused on white communities. So I'm going to think about the black community because they're a part of the world that I live in, hence it is of interest to me. But no, I'm actually not white, however. I am Hispanic, if you want to make these distinctions along skin color and race and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, me and Jessica kind of had a little bit of a clash of ideas, a few different interpretations on the state of the black community nowadays. I mean, just to summarize what we're talking about, there are certain statistics you can point out, like higher crime rates among blacks, or the stereotypes of being welfare recipients or not being independent, and there's a lot of things going on in the black community right now that are really interesting. It kind of reminds me of that old Chris Rock comedy bit where he talks about blacks versus niggas. Of course, that's his word usage. And he basically talks about there's a civil war going on between black people and niggas. And he basically said that on one side you have black people, some who are trying to be civil, who are trying to evolve, who are trying to get on their own 2 feet, become independent, productive members of society. Then you have what Chris Rock calls the niggas, which are the not so productive, not so helpful, more destructive, kind of primitive in a sense, blacks who don't really do much for improving themselves or their community. So that's kind of like the basis of it. The question is, what is holding back black people? Is there who do you blame? Where does the blame come from? So that's kind of like the gist of it. I want to let Jessica kind of chime in, but first, Jessica, if you want to maybe introduce yourself and I guess maybe just kind of tell us what your kind of overall position is on this topic.
Okay, so my name is Jessica Carpin. I live in Florida. My take on this is, I think we brought up the fact that is it genetic that is keeping the black race oppressed. I don't believe so. I don't believe the fact that just because you were born black that you're doomed to a life of crime or oppression. I believe it is a choice to a certain point. I believe this all started where we blamed slavery. And we're riding a wave, I believe your term was, that we're still riding a wave from slavery, and that being used as an excuse, and that event that happened, unfortunate as it was, people are still using that to, I guess, justify their actions. And I believe that it comes down to an individual and their choice, that do they want to use it as an excuse and say, well, I don't know any better, I am, as, that's not my term, but I know people refer to them as monkeys, I'm just a puppet and I'm going to have someone pull my strings and keep going. But I believe it has to come down to the individual that says, okay, this is something that happened already and I want to change it, and regardless of all the factors that are against me, I'm going to fight like hell to get out of it. So that's pretty much where I stand. I don't believe that just because you're born with certain cards or a certain past that it should define your future.
So just to be clear, although you are relatively dark-skinned, for the audience, could you tell us what your ethnic background is?
I am of Indian descent. My parents are from Guyana. It's a country in South America. They have predominantly a Caribbean culture. If we want to get into the terms of slavery, ideally we can say that Indians got to the Caribbean through indentured slavery. So when we get to the fact that blacks in America are behaving in a certain way, that doesn't necessarily happen in the Caribbean. So to use race to define the fact that because this happened to them, this is the way they're acting. I don't think that we can bring it back to race. It has to be an individual standpoint. So
So let
no,
me, yeah, yeah.
I am
Well,
not black either.
right, right. Okay. Well, let me ask you because, you say that your people, I guess you could say, your ethnic racial background, you guys had a history of slavery as well. Yet you say that you guys basically overcame it. Or would you say that in general your people overcame it quicker, faster, easier than blacks are overcoming their past of slavery here in America? Because to be clear, what I mean by overcoming their past of slavery, blacks overcoming their past of slavery, I mean, how long will slavery and institutionalized racism and the terrible racist past in America, how long will that be used by blacks as an excuse for why they haven't become more independent and on their feet? So could you answer that question I posed earlier, if you remember it?
Well, I think of like an example of a way that you feel that blacks are using slavery to justify their behavior, because I personally don't see a correlation very much. I understand where you're coming from to a certain point, but let's use Ferguson, for example. How would the riots in Ferguson be strictly correlated to the fact that blacks were oppressed, aside from the fact that they're just against whites? I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Because of slavery, it's now black versus white. So it's not necessarily because their people were oppressed in the past. It's more that there's a cultural assessment that it's black against whites, where I don't believe is true anymore.
Right, that's the kind of thing that I noticed. I went to a fast food strike a few months ago, and there were many Hispanic people there. There were a few dark-skinned individuals, and one of the things he told me was he's like, "Well, you have white privilege." And this dude, he was from an organization that's local here in South Florida called Dream Defenders, and they're mostly dark-skinned individuals who kind of organize to fight against racism and fight for justice. And of course, they were definitely very like pro Mike Brown. They were they were for all the Ferguson protests. And I just there is this dynamic where they keep bringing up race. When they said white privilege, I have white privilege. The irony is that I'm not white in the sense that they meant, like European white, Caucasian white. I'm Hispanic. My skin just looks kind of white. But it's like a weird form of ironic reverse racism where they're fighting against racism, talking about white privilege and Darren Wilson is evil racist cop and Mike Brown was innocent. And yet they're kind of feeding into racism all over. It's almost like they don't want racism to go away, so they keep feeding into it, saying that I have white privilege, literally judging me on the color of my skin, when my parents were first generation Cuban immigrants. They got here when they were 2 years old. I don't know if that constitutes first generation, but it's still pretty young. They got here from the communist Fidel Castro in Cuba. They got here. They lived in ghettos in Miami. They busted their ass. They rose up. Eventually gave birth to me. I have slightly white skin, but they judged me on the color of my skin. And yet these are the people claiming to be against racism. It's almost like I get this sense that they don't want racism to end because it's this very useful crutch that gives them an excuse for the state of their lives.
I think it abolishes them of responsibility for their actions. That if they get caught with drug paraphernalia in their vehicle, the first thought is, "Oh, you're arresting me because I'm black," which is not true. They use it as victimhood. They become a victim because they're going to blame what happened in the past instead of saying, "Okay, I have illegal drugs in my car. This is the reason why I'm getting pulled over." So it's not necessarily a fact where, see, I don't know. Basically, what they're saying is that because I'm black, someone's going to attack me, because that's the culture they have in their mind. That the white people are using the blacks as their puppets, and I don't think that that's even prominent at this point. If you get back to the media portrays, if you see a black child doing well in school, they're never going to. That's not news. They're going to hide that. They see a black man shoots 4 people, that's breaking news. So when you turn on the news, all you see is these delinquent black people. You don't see as many delinquent white children. It comes down to just the shootings. A white kid goes and shoots up a school, he's troubled. A black kid goes and shoots a school, it's because he's black. That's the only reason they have it for it.
He's a
Right.
thug.
He's a thug. I forget. There's like a meme going out there. So I think it then comes. Let's go back into white supremacy. Now, who's controlling these media outlets? It is the white supremacy race. I guess if you trace it back far enough, I'm assuming you're going to find that it's these slave drivers that used to own slaves that are wealthy people that can maintain their wealth, and they come in, they have all these corporations, they now have their media outlets, they capitalize on these media outlets to kind of brainwash society as to what they're allowed to see, and God forbid people go to alternative media sources and see the truth. So it does come back to white
Are
supremacy.
you
And
talking about the Jews?
we haven't gotten to the Jews yet, okay? Let's
All right.
take it one step at a time.
Okay, cool.
Well, it comes down to white. Jews are white too, so it really comes down to color. Which side of the spectrum are you on? Because I'm dark skinned, I don't have direct black blood. However, if you compare me and you, you're white, I'm black. It's what it comes down to. There are no other races, the way I see it.
I
So,
concur. Yeah, I concur. I'm into that kumbaya, let's all get together, and we're all one type stuff. I'm definitely into that. And just to be clear, for anybody listening, I'm not a racist. I don't think Jessica's a racist. We're just talking about important issues right now, so it's not a racist conversation. But what I find interesting, though, is that, a moment ago, you basically said that, slavery is over, and that using I guess white supremacy, or using the idea of racism as an excuse, or blacks using racism as an excuse for why they get pulled over, or why they're getting targeted. Um, you said that they're not. It's not because of racism, but then you pointed out that there's this white supremacist machine that's involved with the media that's portraying blacks in a negative way. Don't you think that maybe that's affecting how blacks are treated? Maybe blacks are being disproportionately pulled over, or targeted by police because of the fact that, according to your theory, there's this white supremacist machine that puts this image in the minds of people that any black person doing anything bad is a thug, whereas the white kid is just mentally disturbed, or has a mental condition or something like that.
I believe that a seed has been planted in all of our brains, regardless if we recognize it or not. And whereas the cause may not be directly correlated to racism, the ideal that we have about a certain group of people, just because of their color, is pre-ingrained and by the white supremacists. So I don't think it actually has anything to do with slavery at this point. It's a seed that was planted a very long time ago that's just grown until this massive tree. And unless we stop feeding this, it'll never go away. So unless people come out, if you see a hooded guy, a hooded black guy, and a hooded white guy, you automatically think the black guy's a thug. However, the white guy's just cold because of the whole Trayvon Martin thing. So I think it's more of a mindset than anything else, to where we automatically see a darker skinned person and think they're less qualified than maybe a whiter person. You see, it started with slavery. However, it's just we kept feeding into it and allowed it to get to this point, to where the ruling class is the elite and they are white to a certain majority. I'm not saying that they don't have certain people of color that are also part of the agenda. However, most of it does come back to race and to color. Not necessarily because there is any substance behind it, just because of the culture that we've grown into. So then it comes back to the nature versus nurture discussion, where it's not because someone's genes are black. It's because the culture that we live in has taught us to believe that this person is of lesser value. It's not necessarily because they were born, they have less intelligence. I don't believe that's true. I believe they take a certain path that doesn't allow them to become as intelligent as they possibly can, or become as enlightened as they possibly can. Well, that's another discussion of the oppression that are in their communities.
I agree with something you said there. You said, or just this general idea that, I think that a lot of blacks, even if there is a sort of institutionalized white supremacy machine in place that's designed to make blacks look bad in the media and culture, I think that there's still a lot of room for blacks to navigate through life without ever having to deal with that kind of stuff. But the problem is that they still have the mentality that they're being oppressed, that they're being suppressed. And I think that sometimes it's too easy an excuse, too easy a crutch. It's so tempting to just say it's Whitey's fault that a lot of blacks are using it without just reason. There are just reasons where racist motherfuckers target blacks. There may very well be a white supremacist mainstream media designed to portray blacks as shit or terrible people, thugs, criminals. Um, but the problem is that not everything in your life for the average black guy is necessarily, um, or everything bad in that black guy's life is not necessarily the result of racism. And ironically, if you were to just change your belief system out of the Al Sharpton, everyone's out to get you, you need the government to save you brainwashing, and you actually kind of discarded the victimhood mentality, the mentality that I'm weak and I'm a victim, and you actually consider the possibility that maybe you pretty much have the freedom to do what you want. For the most part, you're probably not going to get targeted by racist cops, and that if you just become a, a civilized, productive, active member of society, you will go very far in America, and that there's really very little excuse at this point. So it's not that there's no it's not that there's no white supremacy. It's not that there's no racism. It's not that there's no targeting of blacks. It's that it's a lot less than what a lot of blacks think it is. And there's definitely a machine. I would say a lot of it comes from the Democrat Party, the liberals, and definitely Al Sharpton has vested interest. I mean, the more racism there is, the more Al Sharpton's career stays relevant and lucrative. It's just a fact. Um, I think that there is a culture and there's money and there's momentum in place for blacks to lean on that easy crutch, that tempting crutch of, I'm a victim, racism did it, when I think it's blown way, way, way out of proportion.
Now, there's something that I agree with you completely. You say, when it comes down to it, facts don't lie. So if there's a person who's doing everything right, they're going to school, they're getting a grade, they're studying, regardless of if there is a white supremacist culture out there where they're going to try to oppress them, they cannot oppress the fact that this person is doing well in school and that they should go on to college. You cannot deny them a acceptance to a university if they have all the proper credentials. And I'm not saying this never happens. When it comes down to white versus black with the exact same credentials, depending on who is the one making the decision, I do believe that they're going to gear towards possibly the white person. However, every single black person there is, every single oppressed person there is, needs to understand that if they do the right things, there's no way that anyone can ever stop them. It comes down to mentality, it comes down to willpower. And there will be certain obstacles for every certain person in life. And if you do get turned down, perhaps for a racist reason at one point, if you continue to go and continue to do what it is you want, it can't happen every single time. You're going to come across somebody who will accept you and who will push you forward, and that's when you're going to come out of this oppression. If you look at the school systems in predominantly black communities, they're no way equal quality if you go to an upper scale neighborhood. So you're given a bad card. You're given all the wrong materials, but that doesn't mean you're not gonna succeed in life. It has to come down to the individual character, and if they want to fight this battle and eventually win this battle, and not simply say, oh, you know what, it's a losing battle. I'm not gonna try anymore. I'm just gonna say, screw it. It's the white man's fault. Let me go apply for welfare. Welfare in my mind is a way to keep them oppressed. That if I continually feed them a certain amount of money, they're just going to vote for me. I'm going to continue doing what it is I'm doing. But it's a lot easier, to go collect a welfare check and sit home half the time than to actually go out there and bust your ass and, God forbid, obtain a sense of pride. So.
Yeah, that's a disturbing point, because when you think about welfare, it's always cloaked as it's for the blacks, it's to help them. But I would argue that the best way, if you're a racist, the best way to suppress and oppress black people is to make them dependent on your money, on your support. Well, I'm definitely going to get into that in a little more detail in a moment, but you reminded me of something. One of the things I was arguing when we first had our encounter on Twitter was, which you called my position narrow, which fair enough. If it's narrow, it's narrow, but I guess we'll figure that
I'm
out now.
sorry. Don't hurt your ego.
No, no. Observations are observations. It's good. It's good. So basically, what I said was that, even with all the, higher crime rates among blacks, or black on black crime, um, even with all the stereotypes, like black communities with ghettos, and criminal thugs, and the welfarism, and then the 70% children born out of wedlock in black families to single mothers, and fatherless homes, and all this terrible stuff. In spite of all that, there are still many civilized, productive, independent, empowered, just normal, good, healthy, prosperous black members of society, and that they are here in spite of a history of racism in this country that was specifically targeted at blacks. So the point I was making was, I think that if instead of blacks being enslaved in this country, it had been Asians, there would probably be a bunch of Asians in this country, some of which would be very successful, but some of which would probably be using the history of slavery as a crutch to not get on their own 2 feet. If instead of Asians it had been frickin' Germans, Germans who were enslaved instead of blacks in this country, I think that there would be some blacks who by this time got on their own 2 feet, but there would still be a lot of Germans who were still very codependent on government and who still made a lot of excuses. I think it's the terrifying, horrifying, brutal, barbaric history of slavery in this country, specifically targeted to blacks, who, if you go back just a few generations, these blacks, their forefathers only 150, 200 years ago were slaves in this country. So I think that the deterioration you see among blacks today, where with all the stereotypes, the wedlock, the crime, all these things, it doesn't seem unlikely to me that that is at least significantly the byproduct of the barbarity of white America's slave system in this country, and that it's not just blacks alone or have these negative mentalities that are holding them back. I think if it had been Asians instead of blacks, there would be Asians in this country with similar behavior to blacks. What do you think about that?
Now, I understand where you're coming from, and we're using race, and you're saying that given if it was a different race that this happened to, we'd have a very similar outcome, correct?
Yeah, my point is that race doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't, and that's where it comes down to.
It can be anybody.
Then it comes down to my point of view, where it has nothing to do with blacks. I mean, right now we're predominantly using blacks as an example. However, it comes down to humanity and individuals want to succeed. Now, had it been anybody else, it comes down to your character. Are you afraid to go out there and face life, or do you want to continually remain a victim and blame everybody else for your downfalls? It takes a very strong person to say, I failed because I didn't do enough on my end. You're going to hear, the system screwed me over, I didn't have the right materials, the stars weren't aligned properly. There's a multitude of excuses to have. The people that says my failure is directly correlated to my downfalls and my lack of effort, those are the people that will succeed, because now when they go again to do the same act, they're going to analyze their downfalls, they're going to strengthen themselves, they're going to go, they will succeed. But the people that said, you know what, the system's screwing me over, I shouldn't even try again, they will remain oppressed. So it doesn't come down to are blacks genetically modified to be failures. It comes down to who's natural selection, who's the smarter of the group to continually go forward. Now, the sad part
is... So why
is
it...
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say the sad part is the people that always want to continue to go forward and become successful aren't exactly the nicest of people. So when they go through that, they get a certain level of arrogance, and they now become the oppressors. The oppressee has become the oppressor.
So let me ask you, though, because you said that What was your racial background again?
Of Indian descent, however, my parents were born and raised in Guyana, South America.
Okay, so sort of Indian descent. One of the things you said was that you know people of your Indian descent, you said that they're doing pretty well, even though there's a history of slavery in their past. And you kind of juxtapose that to blacks as if saying that, well, we got over it, so why not them? I guess my question is, well, why do you think that your people kind of moved on and yet blacks are still handicapped, in America at least?
You see, well, what happened in Guyana is that when they became independent, the British they left the country, and they didn't remain, and they don't control the media for one. They don't control the businesses. Everything is very local. So for many years they had a Indian president. Then they had a black president. So the oppressors essentially left the scenario. In America, you still have the ruling class, the white people that are here, and slavery was abolished, but it was abolished in a day. That mentality didn't leave. So that mentality stuck around in America. And just because slavery was abolished doesn't mean white people all of a sudden love black people. They still think they're of a lesser class. So I think that
Absolutely.
that stayed here is probably the reason why blacks are still, I guess you can still say they're very much oppressed. However, as generations go, I mean, there's many things we see that babies are not born racist. It has to be taught to them. So it's not like going back. It's not genetic, and it's not because they're black. That's why they can't get out of this. It's because their oppressors didn't just get up and leave them. They stuck around to continue to oppress them. So it had to be a fight, and it still is a fight to say just because you think less of me doesn't mean I am less. So I believe that's the reason why I don't have the same problems in Guyana or in any of the other countries where Indians were taken as slaves, because they don't have the oppressor still around them every day, still,
Right.
mentally screwing with them.
Yeah, that's and this is exactly what we were going to get into a moment ago. Um, well, yeah, I mean, in a way, yes, the oppressors are very much still surrounding blacks. It's not like, when blacks were set free from slavery, they all went back to Africa and lived back amongst their origins and their people. Even though I did hear that African slave masters sold the black slaves to the white slave drivers, um, but a lot of blacks don't want to hear that. Some blacks don't want to hear that. So I think that sort of losing my train of thought. Okay, yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, yeah, after blacks were freed in this country, after the Civil War, after slavery was abolished and all that, they still lived here, and they still lived. Many of them lived amongst racists. Some probably tried to flee north, get as far away from the fucking South as possible. But what happens when the racists get smart, when they start to become covert in their racism? I mean, if racism is made illegal, or not necessarily illegal, but if slavery was made illegal in this country, but and racism, hating blacks became taboo, something that you can't really speak about openly, that means that racism went undercover, which might actually be more dangerous than people who are openly racist and own slaves, because when it goes undercover, you don't know where it's hiding. And I think today that if ever there was a racist, if ever there was a group within which racists who don't openly say they're racist but secretly are racist, if there was ever a group or organization that they would congregate under, it would have to be the Democrat, the Liberal Party. And I want to read a few tweets that I sent out the other day, and I'm sure you'll have something to say about this, but I'll read them out here because they're relevant. Many liberals are undercover racists because blacks being dependent on whitey's welfare money are much less dangerous than independent blacks. Here's another tweet. Nothing scares a racist more than blacks becoming independent. Being a liberal lets you disguise racism behind altruism while screwing over blacks. Another tweet. I genuinely believe a good chunk of liberals are racists. It's the ultimate velvet glove. If you hated blacks, what would you prefer? blacks stranded on the streets, forced to become independent, or blacks dependent on you to live? And the last tweet, blacks dependent on you to live is the best option for racists. For a racist, it's almost like slavery all over again, except this time you don't see the chains, which again ties back into this idea that, maybe the racism has just simply gone undercover, and the people who feed you support and claim to love you are simply the ones who are using that to keep you down by literally handicapping you. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you. I don't think slavery was ever abolished. It was just widened to include much more people. Because to say that right now, we're all slaves, if you ask me. This, anybody in this country, I feel if you go to 9 to 5, you're a slave, regardless is if the circumstances aren't as, tight as they were back then. I still
Yeah,
believe we're slaves in this country.
there's there's these Mexican dudes. I'm Cuban, so don't call me
You can
racist,
say
people. There's
that.
these Mexican dudes. There's these Mexican dudes, and here in Miami at least, um, I see these Mexicans, and they're hired to like landscape, and they do the most slavish, taxing, physically laborious work I've ever seen. They're out in the sun, sweating. They're using machetes, hacking through trees. It reminds me of footage I've seen, not footage, but movies of slaves hacking through trees, picking cotton in cotton fields. And I was like, maybe we're still slaves in a sense, which feeds into your point. Sorry, go ahead and continue.
Well, that's like what I'm saying. It's your the welfare definitely is. I agree with you 100% that the government is that I don't know if it's going to say it's more predominant to Democrats or Republicans, and the entire ruling class essentially is doing the same thing. If you so once you give somebody something, rarely is it just out of the kindness of your heart. There's a hidden agenda. So if now
Absolutely.
Democrats are more pro-welfare, clearly everyone on welfare is going to vote Democrat every single time. It's more of a political strategy than anything else. And they're going to go out to vote for one. They're not going to question whatever they're telling them, and never really are they going to research if what they're saying is actually true, because don't bite the hand that feeds you. If they get cut off of welfare, if they get
Exactly.
maybe a Republican Party in there that's going to tighten up the welfare laws, then they have to get up every morning and be a slave the rest of us. So, I mean, how ironic is that? They don't want to be a slave, so they'd rather vote for the oppressors to keep everybody else enslaved. So,
Right.
yeah, I definitely agree with
Well, let me ask. Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you. I mean, do you think that in general? I mean, do you think racism is a major driving point of the Democrat Party, or do you think that for the most part the Democrat Party are just well-meaning liberals who actually think welfare is going to help black people? I mean, I'm sure there's some, but I do believe that there's at least some, at least at the high levels of government, some of these Democrats, I genuinely believe there has to be a strain of racism. I mean, it might tie into the fact that if you look at the history of the feminist movement in this country, there was always a competition between women and black women's rights and black rights in this country, where the feminist movement in America in the late 1800s, spearheaded by women feminists like Susan B. Anthony and a few other crazy bitches. They were in competition with blacks to get their rights. Women wanted the right to vote and all these other different rights, and blacks wanted equal rights that transcended their skin color. Um, there was always a kind of competition, and and a lot of people argue that um, the feminist movement, the women's rights movement, was actually angry that blacks got their right to vote before women got their right to vote. And there are actually some interesting quotes from prominent feminists at the time who were openly bitter about the fact. Um, so I think that feminism is definitely directly tied into the Democrat Liberal Party. I think that there's a tie-in there. I think that some elements of the Democrat, the Liberal Party, maybe not the average liberal, just naive and going along, but I think some of the power players in that party, I definitely think they're fucking racists, because if you look at their actions have not helped the black community. I mean, there are statistics that say that once welfare was introduced, once the war on poverty began, um, the black family began to disintegrate. And the reason for that was that, well, when women can get welfare money, they no longer need a husband to help pay for her expenses and her kids. She can just kick the black man out of the fucking house, and then she just gets her money from, her government daddy or her government husband. And so that definitely played a role in deteriorating the black family, because as long as, and of course, blacks aren't the only ones who get welfare, but I guess the vulnerability of the black community in this country made them that much more susceptible to the negative effects of welfare. But and so, and that was one of definitely the deteriorative effects of imposing welfare. And since then, I mean, if you want to talk about the destruction of the family, you want to talk about empowered feminist women, black women who think they were empowered by feminism, who think that taking welfare money empowered them. Well, look at the state of the black community today. 70% or something like 72% of black children are born out of wedlock. They are, single mothers are raising most African American kids, and and most of those kids end up becoming criminals too. These single mothers are raising the majority of the criminals. The absence of a father is incredibly destructive, and that actually ties back into the application of welfare. So my original question was, and I want your opinion on this, do you think that the Liberal Party is just misguided, or do you think that there are some straight up undercover racists guiding the policy forward, or do you just think that it's not about liberals only, it transcends that, it's about the power elite who run both the Republican and the Democrat Party?
Here's the point that I want to make. Aside from race and everything, separation is what keeps these people thriving. They want everyone to be against each other. And now, if me and you get together and say we're on the same side, we're going to fight against what's going on, and we get 10 other people involved, and we continue to grow a unity, they can, at a certain point, they can no longer do what it is they're doing. So it doesn't just come back to the breaking up of the black family. It comes down to the breaking up of every family. They want to deunify us to a point where we don't, strength comes in numbers. So if we're all fighting against each other about something as superficial as race, which is what it is, it's very superficial. If it's kind of like rolling a shiny red ball because they want to get you distracted. So if they continually push this in the media that says, it's black against whites, it's they're being oppressed, it's all racial division, you're not going to see the fact that they're signing law after law to continue to screw you over day after day, where it comes to a point where you can never get out of this hole that they're putting you in. So it's not necessarily the fact that you run up women's rights. I mean, the whole women's rights, the whole feminist movement is another way to unify men against women. So, I mean,
Yeah.
If we start to promote a culture of love and unity and respect towards each other and stop depending on the welfare system, stop depending on the government's never going to be there to promote us or to empower us, because if the smarter we are, the more independent we are, the worse it is for them. Because if I don't need my welfare check, I'm going to say, okay, before I vote, I'm going to go and read and see who really is the best candidate, which is probably none of them.
Exactly.
That's going to screw their entire plan over. I mean, let's not even get into the New World Order or their hidden agenda of the power elite, because that's a completely different conversation. If we wanted to stick to race,
Yeah.
we as
Well, look, I mean, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is definitely true. The government is in the business. I mean, it's funny because when people think of government, they think it's not a business. They think it's the opposite of a business. It's this wonderful, altruistic, airy-fairy institution that comes in to regulate businesses and to regulate the atrocities of human behavior. But in reality, government is in the business of basically taking care of adult babies. Adults who can't take care of themselves. They're in the business of people who don't know how to work together on their own and thus need a governing body to use force to do it for them. Now, again, it's arguable that that's just a cover story for government, that it's there to take care of us. But either way, you see that there's a kind of a conflict of interest, or there's vested interest, where the government wants codependent people. It wants people who fight against each other. It's kind of like, it's like the mainstream media. It's in the business of of talking about fear, talking about chaos, stuff that gets your attention with the breaking news headline and all that crazy shit. Government is in the business of taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. So they don't want empowered people. I mean, the last thing a politician wants, even though his speeches are all like, pro, get on your feet and let's everybody, go forward to a better future, all this stuff, at the end of the day, if you look at what really drives them, it only makes sense that they would want to see people stay further oppressed, further codependent, and just not empowered. It's just the nature of government. They don't want to see an end to humanity's tendency towards destroying each other. They want more of it.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, they thrive on our stupidity to a certain point. I don't know to use a better word. I mean, even the most educated person that has all the degrees doesn't necessarily mean that they're intelligent people, that they can think for themselves. I mean, even if you look at the education systems, they're indoctrinating you with certain ideals that are very much in line with what it is they want to achieve. And it really comes down to each individual, regardless of race, to say that I'm going to stand up and think for myself. I'm going to analyze the information I'm being given. I'm going to formulate my own opinion. I'm not going to knock my brother or sister. I'm going to try and work together with everybody against these people. And, like what I said earlier about, I just read a comment, actually. I keep checking out to see what people were saying, and they said they were black slave owners as well. Yeah, there were, because at some point someone says, I know better than you, so I'm going to, take over your life, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and it's all going to be great. That mentality needs to change. At no point will anyone ever know yourself better than you do, and at no point should anybody ever have the ability to rule over you. And if you stand up against that, I think we'll definitely be in a much better society. And it doesn't, you see, we're straying away from the racial conversation right now, because when you look at it, it doesn't matter what race you are. It depends on your individual character and what it is you want to do. And if you promote a sense of love and unity and acceptance towards one another.
Yeah. Well, see, here's one of the tragic things about the state of the black community today, to stay on the topic of race, is that there's definitely a crabs in the bucket mentality among blacks, where if you're a black guy and you become independent and you become capable of taking care of your own family, becoming empowered, a lot of times other blacks will, like crabs in a bucket, they'll try to tear them back down before they crawl out of the bucket, before they become empowered and independent. They have words for a black man who becomes independent and empowered. They call him an Uncle Tom. They call him a house nigga or a coon. And these are terribly destructive words that blacks are using against their own people. I hear a lot of these blacks. I've confronted some of them in person. I've debated a lot of them on Twitter. Not all blacks, but some. And they'll say things like, they keep using the term my people or our people. I think collectivism, ironically, is something that's really holding back blacks, where blacks, a lot of them, they're enslaved to each other. They're enslaved to other blacks who condemn you if you leave the ghetto. I heard the other day some dude said that if you're black and you leave the ghetto, you're not a real man. Real black men stay in the ghetto. So you stay in these fucking shitty neighborhoods with high black-on-black crime rates. And that's what it means to be a man. It's crabs in a bucket. They're holding each other back. And I think it's destructive. I mean, it seems like the greatest enemy to some blacks is not fucking white supremacy or whitey or some rednecks out in the fucking woods of Alabama, around the fucking bonfire in white robes. A lot of times, black people's greatest enemy are other blacks. And it's a sad crabs in the bucket mentality that it's really destroying blacks. I mean, I've heard one black dude on YouTube. He's pretty interesting. He calls it post-traumatic slavery disorder. Post-traumatic slavery disorder. It's basically blacks still have a mentality in this country that independence somehow must be gained through cheating the system or serving whitey the way house niggas or coons used to do or Uncle Toms used to do. And so it's this kind of lingering fear, this lingering zeitgeist within the black community that seems to be the greatest hindrance to blacks nowadays. It's an internal mentality as well as one that they they label onto other blacks that I think is doing a lot more damage a lot of times than any supposed white supremacy or institutional racism or whatever. What do you think?
Well, let's think about why that's happening. You see, if one person gets out, that's no longer acceptable for the 10 others to stay in. So it kind of challenges their
Exactly.
excuse. And so they
Yep.
try to continually keep other people around them down so that they don't have to rise up. So it's counterproductive, yes, but it always comes down to why are they doing it. It's not because they truly feel that the person that's getting out is betraying them, or if they have some kind of black unity that they feel like this has to be their culture. It comes down to the fact that if somebody busted their ass, went to college, got a degree, got a great job, it's no longer acceptable for them not to do it. So
Exactly.
that's
I
the way we
agree.
kind of see
I
correct evil.
totally agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's that temptation to use the past as a crutch, as an excuse. You know, blame it on racism, or if one black guy can make it, like you said, then what's my excuse? Is essentially what it comes down to. If you made it, then who's holding me back? What? How did you overcome the evil white supremacy? You know, it's funny. The other day there was this trend, this hashtag that was trending on Twitter. It was called Blackout Day, and it was basically a trend started by blacks, some blacks. Basically, it was supposed to be a trend of empowerment, like post pictures of yourself and just black people. And of course, I find that ironic because the word blackout essentially, I mean, first of all, the word blackout is a negative term. It implies that there's a lack of power. There's a power outage, which is ironic because a hashtag that was designed to represent black empowerment was actually synonymous, the word blackout, synonymous with a lack of power, a power outage. I thought that was pretty ironic. But it's this thing where, and again, it kind of goes back into that ironic incidental racism thing, where I keep hearing among many blacks that we have to overcome racism and the evil white supremacy, and we have to move on from racism. And yet everything I see, these same blacks who are complaining about that, everything I see is them talking about their own skin color. I mean, we have BET, Black Entertainment Television. We have Blackout Day. We have that one black individual that I saw in person who told me I had white privilege, even though I'm not white, but there he was judging me on the color of my skin like a racist. I mean, this is pretty goddamn ironic, and to me it kind of tells me that the problem isn't white supremacy as much as it is a distorted or flawed interpretation of reality.
I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly. Where it's an excuse. It's everyone's looking for an excuse to not be as great as they possibly can be. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. But
No, that's cool. That's cool.
when it comes down to it,
By the way, I know you want to talk about the New World Order and the Jews and the reptilians who control everything from a spaceship.
I feel like it's
I
like
just don't
the
know.
agenda.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll stay entirely relevant to the title
No,
of
that's
this
fine.
debate slash discussion. And also, you told me that you were an anti-feminist, which I know my viewers would be fascinated to know about. So I don't know if we'll go into that just for shits and giggles, but um, I guess we can kind of we'll go in briefly into feminism, and we'll go briefly into I guess your theories about these greater powers. But I guess I just want to get your conclusion on the whole race topic. Um, I mean, so you say that your racial background, you're of Indian descent, and there was a history of racism. Uh, I mean, I guess if you had any advice or something that you would want to give to blacks today to liberate them and make them empowered, I guess what would you tell them?
No, I just want to make it clear that I never I never went through like let's say the white privilege lifestyle. I went to some of the ghetto schools, if you would say so, and the schools where they'd have cops every day. You know, they weren't the most glorious. We'd always have the right school materials. Regardless of what I was given, I went to public school my entire life. Regardless of all the things that I've been through and the type of resources that I had, I still took it upon myself to make sure that I succeeded. So basically, my conclusion is it's not a racial thing, it's an individual thing. And if, like, just
Right.
Martin Luther King says, he wants people to be judged not on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. So if you upraise your character to a certain level, there's nothing that can stop you. So it's not because you're black that you're going to be screwed for your entire life. So I personally think that there is no racial matter going on right now as far as mentality wise. There are certain the white supremacy is out there and ruling because we're allowing them to, and we're not standing up unified against it and saying that, regardless of the fact that you're going to pass me over for a promotion or pass me over for acceptance, I'm still going to keep out there trotting away and keep trying. So when it comes, I remember we started talking about genetics, and is it just because I'm black that's why they behave the way they are? I don't believe so. I think it's a combination of fear, um, victimhood, and just it comes down to their mentality, the way they think, what it is they want to accomplish.
Super. Cool. Well, I guess what I would say is similar, very similar to what you said to blacks or blacks who struggle with this issue. Because again, it's not all blacks; it's some. Don't want to generalize here. Is that I think that there is definitely a crabs in the bucket collectivistic mentality. I think collectivism is killing the black man nowadays. It's the tendency to say my people or our people. It's this Black Lives Matter stuff where you literally are taking part in an incidental form of reverse racism, where you claim you're fighting against racism, yet your focus, your hyper focus on skin color is just perpetuating, as you said, the divide and conquer division that's keeping people in a state of oppression and downfall to begin with. Um, this idea of collectivism is so poisonous in this sense because the alternative to collectivism is individualism. And as Ayn Rand said, you cannot claim to fight for minorities if you're not fighting for individual rights for the individual, because the individual is the greatest minority. I mean, blacks might be a minority, or Mexicans might be a minority here in America, but a greater minority than blacks or Mexicans are fucking individuals. And that's what people need to realize. They have to stop judging people on these collective, color-based generalizations. My people, our people. That kind of collectivism actually enslaves you to each other. It enslaves you to other people, where your actions are tied in. Black Lives Matter. Essentially what you're saying is that anyone with black skin matters. What about a black murderer? What about a black rapist? What about a black child molester? What about some black woman who has 40 kids out of wedlock and doesn't take care of them and doesn't care about them? What about geez, I don't know. I mean, even maybe Barack Obama. A lot of people think Barack Obama is a sellout. Well, he's black. Even blacks think Obama's a sellout. So, I mean, Black Lives Matter is lumping all black people in together on the basis of skin color, which sounds kind of racist to me, and saying that their lives matter. That's silly bullshit. Not every life matters, in my opinion, because I think some people are douchebags. Now, maybe you can get into the argument, nature versus nurture, or people born a certain way, or is it their environment that shapes them? Hence, we can't blame murderers and psychopaths. I don't think that's your view. I mean, not the murderers and psychopaths, but I mean, you said earlier that you don't think genetics is a determining factor, and that people can stand up and make choices for themselves. But anyway, that's what I would say, is that this collectivism is not only hindering you, but it's actually hindering your people, and it's not helping anybody. But let me ask you real quick, how much time you got?
As much time as you want.
Okay. Well, would you like to get into would you like to discuss briefly a little bit about feminism, and then maybe your conspiracy theory about who runs the world?
Let's get into it, man. I see
All right, well,
these comments every once in a while. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to touch the YouTube video in case the same fucking thing happens all over again. So if you want to read comments and point out anything interesting, that'd be awesome, because I don't want to touch that.
My favorite, I feel like this is one of the mean tweets live. I'm confused. Probably I am, but I don't think there's anything worth mentioning from what I can see. I'm just briefly scrolling through.
And you're talking about the YouTube channel comments, or you're talking about Twitter?
The YouTube channel, the live chat.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna touch that. Let me see what's going on Facebook. Guys, as a brief little pause here, we're going to try and check out what your comments are, see if there's any questions or comments worth pointing out. Did you find anything by any chance?
There's a mention to certain physical attributes that I wouldn't even get into. It's
probably a couple douchebag comments is inevitable.
Hey man, the whole point of this is to state your piece and to try and get your message through. And basically, my message on this whole racism issue is that if we want it to go away, we can make it go away. It does come down to us individually, and regardless of all the facts are correct, it comes down to each individual. And stop labeling yourself is basically what it is. The fact that you're continuing to say Black Lives Matter, or, you know, they have your own channel, Black Entertainment, you're deliberately ostracizing yourself. So there's that.
So no interesting comments there on the YouTube.
No, let's not bring it up. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Well then, let's talk feminism, because I know my audience is into that, and so am I. And you're an anti-feminist. At least that's kind of the idea I got from you. So, I mean, how dare you be anti-woman? Why are you anti-woman? Are you some kind of misogynist? Are you a woman hater? Do you want to go back to the days of, you know, women being stoned to death because they thought they were witches? I mean, what's wrong with you, you anti-feminist?
Like I said, I hate labels, and what feminists are actually portraying themselves as, it's for me, it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. Me personally, I never had an issue with the wage inequality. I've never faced that. It always came down to, am I capable to do whatever job that I have, and if I am, I get adequately paid.
So you're not a professional victim?
No, I'm not a professional victim because I never allowed myself to be a professional victim. I didn't run in there and scream and says, you know, because I'm a woman, you have to give me this. I said, okay, fine. This is the job at hand. I'm going to do it to my best ability. And if you feel like it's worth a certain amount, I've studied the market to see what it is I should be making. And if I'm not making something similar to that, I find out why. If I'm doing something wrong. Basically, when it comes down to feminists, I feel are victimizing themselves by coming out there and saying, they want wage equality, but the man has to give it to them. Well, why not go out there and ensure the fact that you are getting adequate pay because you do know what it is that you're doing. You can't walk into a company as an intern and say, I demand to have what this staff person is making. You don't deserve that. You won't deserve what it is you work for. You're not entitled to anything. And the way they portray themselves is absolutely disgusting. Why does they have that the actress from Big Bang Theory had to publicly apologize for saying that she enjoys cooking for her husband? That's why would she even belittle herself to actually publicly apologize for that? If you like to do what you do, why is it a problem for feminists to say that you can't like to cook for your man? You're oppressing yourself. I don't want to go out there and cut the lawn. So if I cook in the kitchen, it's a much easier job for me. It just makes more sense in my thing. It comes down to even biology. Women, regardless if you agree with it or not, all are the weaker species. They don't have the muscle mass to go out and do manual labor, and they are more nurturing. So why not capitalize on your strengths as opposed to complaining about what it is you can't do? To be a female bodybuilder, you have to inject yourself with testosterone on a daily basis because you cannot do it. Why? I mean, I guess this is a subject that I can clearly hold my own a lot more than the racism subject. So,
holy shit! I'm being blown away. I'm being blown away right now. It's wow. Keep going.
I'm gonna let you. The comment one is really the one that pissed me off the most. A guy lands a was it a probe on a comment? I mean, I want to see anybody else do that, but he has to apologize because he wore an offensive shirt. And it comes down to what we were talking about before we went live about what makes you offended? Why are you offended by something that has no direct correlation to you? How can you rise up and say this guy is a horrible human being? He is worth nothing because he wore a sexist shirt. If it was a woman that had a shirt full of guys on it, I don't think anyone would give a shit. Do guys even care? So.
Wow, that was pretty intense. Yeah, you went off on a rant there. I think you need your own YouTube channel.
I get very upset when people take such minor issues and blow it out of proportion. I mean, the females that are standing there out there topless protesting, you're making a mockery of yourself essentially. Where's the respect? Where's the dignity of doing that? I don't see it at all. I'm gonna
One of
check
the
to see.
most beautiful things, yeah, one of the most beautiful things you said was, um, you know, as a woman, why not capitalize on your strengths instead of focus on your weaknesses? The idea that there are, in fact, inherent biological differences between men and women. These are taboo topics in the mainstream of society. These are politically correct. These ideas are dangerous ideas, which is the most insane thing because everybody knows on a practical day-to-day basis that men in general are stronger than women, and women are more kind of weak physically. It doesn't mean that they're of less value than men. They have different things that make them valuable. One of the key things being that they are nurturers of life. Um, the woman has, I mean, women are essential parts of the equation of life. And it's almost like feminists fear that if they're not manly like men, they're going to lose their value, which is total bullshit. Women are half the equation. They have this womb thing, which can literally create life. It can create fucking life, nurture, like a new human being will appear inside of a woman within 9 months, less than a year. And she gives birth, and there's this new life form here on the planet. That is one of the most powerful, crucial traits any human being ever has. Like Einstein was a genius, but he couldn't create life. Right? Women can create life. It's an amazing feature, and it's this idea that I call the power of the womb. Women have immense power. Number one, because they can create life, but number two, because women have forgotten, at least women brainwashed by feminism, have forgotten that one of your greatest ways of influencing the future of society is choosing which man gets to have sex with you. Being the person who chooses which man gets to have children is literally the power to shape civilization. That is a huge power. And if you look at what men do, for all of men's strengths, which feminists think that a strong man compared to a weak woman just proves that women are weak, and women have to get up and be strong, and they have to try to do and mimic all the things that men do, and they'll never be happy until then. Women have to be mothers, and they have to have a job, which is just so ruthless to women nowadays. I sort of lost my train of thought, but I did lose my train of thought, so I don't know if you have anything to throw in there.
No, I feel like ideally back in the day it was the woman stayed home, the man was the breadwinner. He went out and he brought the food to put on the table, and sadly in this economy the way it's become, that's no longer plausible. And for me, I understand that it's no longer plausible, so I've taken necessary steps to ensure that I can still bring in a certain amount of money if a certain amount of planning is done to make sure that you're not pressuring your spouse, because it's really impossible. You're going to have to forego so many luxuries in life, so many, maybe getting a tutor for your children in order to stay home and watch your children. That's given the fact that the woman actually stays home. Sometimes the men stay home, but it comes down to, you know, there's a clip I saw on YouTube a while back with a guy speaking out against the Rockefellers' agenda about pushing women's suffrage was actually a conspiracy to get women into the workforce, to break up the family, to ensure that, the father and mother are out there working. First of all, double taxation is one of them. To break up the family values is the second one. To ensure that we don't have this unity anymore. And I think that when it comes down to it, it's the same thing with racism. If you want to look at it, feminism is the same thing as black oppression. If you want to tie it back into the actual topic, where it wants to deunify us, it wants to separate us so that we're weaker as a whole against who it is that's trying to control us. And women as a whole, it's carrying that child, like you say, in the womb factor, that bonding time, that's just strictly emotional, will allow you to know that that child is a part of you, will allow you to know their needs before, you say the mother knows a certain cry. A man cannot do that. I personally don't think. There are great fathers out there, great single fathers that do their very best, but when it comes to getting the most efficient and the best outcome, that to me is a woman's role. That's embedded in you. That's what you're put on this planet to do. Why can't we coexist, as opposed to saying, a man can never have a child, and a woman will never, without additional supplements, be as strong as a man. It's biology. It's not something that someone said, okay, this is your role in life. It's what you were born with. It stands the test of time. It's how we were made. So who are you going to blame that on? You're going to blame, want to get into a conversation about God. Are you going to blame God for making you the weaker gender?
No, you just take what you have and you do the best with what you can. I mean, what you were saying with the fact that women are inherently, naturally more nurturing, I think that should be so obvious. I mean, women nurture life, create the baby for 9 months in the womb. If she's gonna create the baby, nurture it into existence while the baby is in the womb, why not just continue the process of child rearing after the child is born? Why does she have to have a job and work in corporate America and get taxed so the government can get rich off the other 50% of the population, i.e. women, which again ties into that conspiracy approach to why feminism was imposed in the U.S. But that's the thing. It's like women are already inclined to be nurturing life, already inclined to be child rearers. They're literally child creators in the womb. So when the child comes out of the womb, why not just continue that process of taking care of the kid? Stay near the kid. Take care of the kid. Why does the mom have to go then work in corporate America for most likely a male boss under the guise of female empowerment? Yeah, that really sounds like women's liberation to me. Women's liberation is a woman abandoning a child she nurtured for 9 months in her womb so she can work 45 hours a week at some job, take 50% of her attention away from her husband, the man she loves, the father of her children, so she could focus that attention on a male boss in corporate America at her job. It doesn't sound like liberation to me. It sounds like feminism has sold women a scam and they fucking swallowed it hook, line, and sinker.
I, as a female in corporate America, can tell you there is nothing more degrading than to sit in an office with a male boss at an interview, and all he's pretty much slyly implying is that this job is yours if you do such and such. And regardless of how many people are going to start knocking me, from the emotional sense, I don't. Now, this is not a case for the entire mass, but women are not as emotionally strong as men. And for me, personally, it's absolutely exhausting to have to keep your head on 24/7 and to do all these things. Make sure you're going to work. You have to come home and make sure everything's taken care of at work. When you go out, you have to make sure you're not being a target. And isn't that why men are stronger? Men are more able to think about certain things just mechanically. They're more mechanically inclined. I'll talk to a friend or a relative about certain car functions, and I'm completely lost. I don't think there's ever a time. I'm not a stupid person, but I have no interest for one, and you can't grasp certain concepts. The same way as that if I go in the kitchen, I can lazy maneuver my way regardless of. It's sounding very Donna Reed-ish, but it is what it is. I've given into what it is that I am. I've been accepted of who I am and what I was born with, and I took it and I ran with it. I'm not going to go. I'm 5'2". I'm not the tallest person in the world. I cannot go be a pro athlete because I don't have that in me. So now I feel like women are the people fighting to grow 8 inches. It's never going to happen. It's not what it is.
It's almost like the crabs in the bucket mentality that I described earlier with blacks, where blacks were the greatest enemy to each other. It's almost kind of like that with feminism, where women are the greatest threat to each other with this whole feminism shit. It's sad that right now when you said that you know how to maneuver your way through a kitchen, the fact that you had a slight hesitation, almost like a slight bit of shame in it, that to me is sad, and it's really a testament to what feminism has done. It reminds me of the Katie Cuoco situation, the one of the main actors from the Big Bang Theory show, who had to apologize um, to everyone basically because she said that she likes being a traditional wife. She likes making money, not making money. She likes cooking food for her husband. You know, doing housewife duties. She likes these things, and the feminist went out and hung her. I mean, you know, feminists talk about the evils of slut shaming. How about, you know, housewife shaming? You know, you shaming women for wanting to be traditional housewives, wanting to serve their husbands. Like that to me is not feminism. These feminists are not interested in female liberation or female empowerment or female choice. They're only interested if you join their fucking feminazi ranks. And if you don't, you know, toe the line, toe the party line, they are going to take you down. And it happens so often. And it's a shame that women are ashamed of yielding to their femininity, being submissive, wanting to serve a man, and instead of, you know, feeling in to these inherent biological facts of who they are, which doesn't make them less valuable than men, it just makes them valuable in a very different yet crucial way. Instead of doing that, they feel like they have to compete against men. They have to join the workforce, and then you got women competing against each other now. Women think that it's a sign of empowerment to make more money than her female counterparts. And again, I'm not saying that women can have their own jobs. I'm not saying that women can't, you know, try to be independent. I think individuals, you know, transcending gender, individuals should be judged on an individual case-by-case basis. If one woman wants to go out and be a fucking athlete, or she wants to start a business, or she wants to join the military, I mean, I say let women and men do whatever the fuck they want, assuming they can do what they claim they want to do, they can actually accomplish the task or job, and assuming they truly want to, and that they're not just doing it because they've been shamed. They had their femininity shamed by feminists, and now they think they have to go do all the things that are politically correct, even though they don't truly want to do it. And a lot of women nowadays, they are not in tune with their femininity, and a lot of them don't know how to contextualize their feelings. I mean, there's a study that came out that over the past like 4 decades, women have become less happy. Women have become less happy since the rise of feminism. And I would say it's because feminism killed femininity. Feminism is a funny word, you know, it sounds like it's pro-woman, it's pro-femininity, but it's not. It's anti-femininity, as it encourages women to behave like men, to abandon their femininity in exchange for masculinity. So that's the real tragedy here, is that what masquerades as the solution, feminism is the solution, it's the way for women to become empowerment. What masquerades as the solution is actually the thing that kills you, and that's very similar with blacks and welfare. Welfare is the way to empowerment. It'll give you a few rungs up the ladder to get you onto your feet. It's how we care about you. That's how the system cares about you. Welfare. But then you take it, and it's little poison drops that enable you. It just cripples you.
I definitely agree with the with people being less happy of the rise of feminism, especially women. Like I said, with capitalizing your strengths, success makes you happy. Doing something very well makes you happy, and trying to do what you're not equipped to do will never yield the results as somebody who was made to do that. Now, I personally just, I guess I'm soft, but I can't do the dog eat dog world in the corporate world. I can't go and deliberately screw somebody over, stab somebody in the back, call it a feminine quality, or call it just moral character. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but in certain circumstances, men are competitive. I mean, women are competitive as well, but just the aggression that you need is not something that I feel that's part of me. And like I said, I'm not sure if it's a feminine quality or if it's just strictly proper upbringing. I don't know what you want to call it, but you can never be truly happy unless you're truly yourself. And to go out there and say that I'm just going to bypass everything that I was born to do, you know, I'm not going to raise my children. I'm not going to give them the care that I know I don't think anyone will ever care for a child more than the mother possibly could. That's ruining a part of you that will essentially make you happy. It serves your soul. If you want to get into, that's another argument. We can get into the theory of the soul. In going into an environment, a very mundane, sure, corporate world. I'm only speaking corporate because that's all I know. It's very drab and it's very depressing. It's soul sucking to a certain point to do the same thing over and over again and to have to one up your competitors and your competition. It gives me absolutely no joy to stay home with a child and nurture them and know that I'm molding them into a decent human being and showing them love and kindness, which is essentially, if you want to get back to the race, being there and loving your child and instilling them with a sense of compassion is what will ensure they'll grow up to be a decent human being and not continue this, this violent crimes against humanity. It all starts from childhood. It's what you're ingrained with. If you want to get into there's a Dr. Bruce Lipton that says up to the point, I believe he says 7 years of age is when you determine who that person will be. Those are the best years of life. Do you want to send them to a daycare facility where there's 20 other children and they're never going to get individual nurturing and individual care, or do you want to stay home and do it yourself to make sure they can be the best possible person they can? So, yeah, I don't know how feminists can ever begin to justify abandoning their child. Then you're going to get into, if you want to get into psychology, you get the abandonment feature where my mother didn't think it was important enough to stay home and take care of me. She sent me off to a daycare facility where no one actually paid attention to me and didn't give me the proper developmental care. I mean, where does it begin and where does it end?
Yeah, it's so sad. And you're definitely right about how impersonal the daycare centers are. It's tragic because, and it's also bizarre because, if a woman like Katie Cuoco wants to stay home and be a traditional housewife and just take care of her kids, feminists shame her. But if Katie Cuoco wants to go and work at a daycare and take care of somebody else's kids, that's female liberation. That's women's empowerment. And it's just like it becomes so obvious what feminism is really about. And it's not about women's empowerment or women's choice. It's it's anti-femininity. And it's ironic because if you look into the origins of the modern feminist movement, which you mentioned earlier, some have theorized, and with good evidence, that the feminist movement was initiated in America. It was put forth, the women's liberation movement in the 1970s was funded by elites. It was funded by elitist interests that had a twofold reason for why they wanted feminism. The first reason that these elitists wanted feminism to brainwash women was that, well, if women become liberated and empowered, they're going to go out into the workforce and now they're going to have a job which the government can tax. You couldn't tax a woman who was just working at home, but she leaves the home, she gets a job, now you can tax her, and now you're taxing the entire population of workers, not just the men who work outside the home in the taxable companies. The second ulterior motive for the implementation of feminism in this country, the theory is that, well, if women aren't home taking care of the kids because the women are out there, busting their asses at these miserable 9-to-5 jobs, then who's going to take care of the kids while the parents are at work? Oh, well, you put them in the daycares and you put them in the public schools. And now the government's taking care of the kids. Now the government's raising your kids. They've got their fucking hands on your children. And now they can make them say the Pledge of Allegiance every fucking day. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And they brainwash the mantra, searing it into their brains 5 days a week every morning. You see what feminism says it's about, its catchphrases about gender equality and women's empowerment, and then you see the fruits of feminism, the consequences of feminism. And more often than not, you see that it's actually anti-femininity. And people talk about restoring the sacred feminine. They say that the sacred feminine has been sacrificed. And people think that, oh, well, to restore the sacred feminine, what we got to do is we got to empower women through what feminism tells us we're supposed to do. So give women a job and have her be like men and make her as strong as possible by doing a bunch of push-ups. and we think that that is going to restore the sacred feminine. To restore the sacred feminine is to give women permission to be feminine again. And feminine is an energetic concept tied into a woman's biology that has to do with being submissive, yielding, emotional, intuitive, nurturing, caring on an emotional level, specifically in terms of her biology as well, because she's going to give birth to a kid and she has to care for it in the womb, and then naturally, why wouldn't you just keep taking care of it? Those are the feminine features, and feminism is clearly in all of its actions, it's anti-femininity. I mean, I've said this a million times on my channel, but there it is.
I want to get into the you posted a video recently, the was it the anti-slut video? Um, I feel like
Privilege of being a slut, I guess.
right, the whole they're trying to justify it. Women just want to do whatever they feel possible and blame the men for what happens. I don't understand how you can walk around the world half dressed and God forbid you get raped, blame it on somebody else. I mean, if you want to get into psychological, that just the brain chemistry, when men see a half-dressed woman or a naked woman, they no longer see them as a human being. They see them as an object. So when it moved towards the fact that that's not no longer a human being, I refuse to, regardless of how much men enjoy seeing these things, the majority of men will say they have no respect for these women. So then the feminists now behave in a certain manner to where they're just trying to get attention, and then when men have no respect for them, they get upset. But it's that choice was yours. That choice was yours, how you wanted to portray yourself, how you wanted to carry yourself in the world, and what you wanted to stand for. And to behave in such a manner says you don't stand for much. Essentially, as horrible as it sounds, you cannot blame anybody else for the choices that you made. And even just abortion, that's a whole different topic to get into.
If you want to go into it.
It's how do you say, okay, I was raped, or I didn't plan properly and I became pregnant, now it's okay to go and abort a child. I'm not necessarily against. See, I'm pro-choice, but personally I would never partake in the act, only because I personally cannot do that. But I want people that if they feel the need that they have to, they should have the ability, they should have the choice to do so. Who am I to say that, given certain circumstances, who am I to say that it should be abolished or it should be banned from society? But it comes down to taking responsibility for your actions, and however you want to portray yourself, there's certain consequences that you need to live up to. And it comes down to blacks. If you want to go and you want to loot a store and people compare you to an uncivilized race, that's a choice that you made. Who are you really going to blame for the personal choices that you make? Why are you going to blame somebody else?
Yeah, sluts are an interesting topic. It's kind of interesting what you say about, a woman who goes out dressed, very exposing outfits, or who's very promiscuous. I mean, women know that they are manipulating a man with their body. I mean, that's the power of being a slut. The power of being a slut is that you can manipulate men. And I'm not here to make an argument for Islam that women should walk around in robes, in freaking burqas all day, totally concealing their bodies. But it's definitely true that, in our modern society, one of the main powers that women have is how they can control male sexual desire. I mean, this is why women, wear makeup. This is why they do their hair. It's just about making themselves pretty and presentable to the opposite sex. The question is, how far do you take it, and what are the results of it? I think it is true what you said about kind of not having respect or a sense of self-worth, or not standing for much if you dress like a slut. I kind of think that we should be able to live in a world where everybody should just be allowed to walk around naked. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like we shouldn't have to be limited by. I feel like people should just have the freedom to walk around naked, like not because you want to use your body to manipulate men in exchange for sex and free dinners, but just because I think people should have the freedom to walk around naked. It's just like I could walk around naked in my house. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not like disgusted or anything. why would I want to make it illegal to walk outside naked? I just feel like this condemnation and shaming of the human body is A, not rational, and B, it's putting yourself in a prison. Like, if you don't mind being naked in the privacy of your own home, why would you support a law that makes it a crime? Like, sometimes I just like, what if I just like, like, I'm tired of having these fucking tan lines on my ass and like my upper thighs because I have to wear shorts all day. Like, I wish I could just like go out naked in my backyard or front. Technically, you could do it in your backyard, but what if I just want to go in my front yard and just tan my ass and my balls and just get a nice, consistent tan? Like, you can't do that. It's like, there's a logical, functional reason for wanting to do that. I don't want to be a pervert. I'm not trying to, like, impress anybody or disgust anybody. There's just a logical, functional reason for being naked outside in public. But that was kind of fucking randomly off topic. But yeah, I
still
mean,
have a problem with tan lines, though. I understand what you're saying.
Say it again. Say it again.
I do have a problem with tan lines, so I understand what you're saying. I want to get an even tan when I go out.
Exactly.
I'm just
you see where I'm coming from. I'm not just a pervert here ranting about the weirdness. So yeah, I mean, so it's like, so this ties back into like my opinions on the whole slut thing. I think that it's a kind of like it's about the intention. When the average slutty-looking woman goes out and she dresses in provocative ways, very limited clothing, and she's ready to have a one-night stand with any guy, I do know that there is a degree. She's well aware of what she can do to the male mind. She's well aware of what she can do to the male mind, and the male mind just like explodes. I don't know if because we're born this way or if it's conditioned to us by society, but the male mind explodes with excitement and craving when he sees a naked woman. And paradoxically, it's not necessarily a naked woman. It's naked women that are scarce, that there's not many of them, or it's not easy to get the naked women. But more importantly, it's kind of like the teasing element of wearing short shorts or a short skirt or a push-up bra that really accentuates your body parts. There's a certain teasing going on there that may actually be more enticing than just her being naked. It's almost like, see, this, you might be able to get this, but you have to, do this, this, and that to get it. I think it's about intention. Although at the same time, I think people should be allowed to just walk around naked. I do see why being slutty or dressing in provocative or promiscuous ways can actually be used as a tool of manipulation. I don't want to say that I support burqas. I don't think we should go back to fucking some Islamic culture and women can't be allowed to go out in daylight. But to me, the whole slut shaming thing is, I think there's some validity to it from the feminist perspective, but I'm doing it for different reasons. I think feminists have an ulterior motive, as they always do. I just think people should. I have this grand vision of a collective kumbaya utopian society where people just fuck whoever they want, and if somebody has a kid, then everybody communally raises the kid, and there isn't, oh, that's my kid, your kid. But that's like so far down the line in the utopia of everybody loves each other and we all live in communal happy tribes that it basically has no practicality. So, I mean, in that case, there is no slut. Everybody fucks everybody. There's no monogamy. And there's really not many consequences because if you have children, it's not just the poor lady's kid who had the kid, it's everyone's kid. Obviously, there are some restraints. You don't just want to have a million fucking kids because there are limitations in terms of resources, but that's the gist of it. I don't want to go on for the rest of my life. I don't know if you have anything else to say on that topic.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that ideal in any I think we need to maintain a certain level of eliteness. If you're allowed to go and do whatever you want at any given point, then you ruin the enjoyability factor of it. If you can just go and see anybody that you want and have them, you're ruining the thrill of the chase. Essentially, it's just one free for all. There's no satisfaction at all. There's no eliteness. There's no. I don't even know where to begin.
Did you say eliteness? Did you say eliteness?
That's the term that I kind of. There should be an eliteness.
That's a horrible word to use. You're an elitist.
No, I'm not.
You gotta join my my communal orgy society. That's the only way to truly evolve towards love and true unity.
No,
But no, not that
I
elitist
agree with you on
monogamy
the
stuff.
communal side, but aren't you ruining the DMT factor of, if you cannot get everything you want at every given time. Then we're going to get into a yin and yang conversation of you have to be rejected to enjoy acceptance to a certain point, and then are you going to ruin the happiness that you have that you feel from
See, aren't you coming? Isn't that coming from the paradigm of scarcity, where there's not enough to go around, and man, I hope I get this girl, and the fact that she's making me work hard for it, that that makes it that much more valuable when I finally get it. Like, why does the competitive chase have to exist? And of course, the chase. I mean, the chase kind of harkens back to the our very primal days of chasing, the predator, chasing the prey, and trying to get it before anybody else gets it, and then when you finally get it, you conquered it, and it's yours. It's very, see, for me, monogamy is based on elitism. It's based on a sense of arbitrary elitism. Really, I mean, that's the word for it. I think monogamy, when you think about it, it's a form of control. It's a form of wanting to own other people. It's she's my husband, or that's my wife, and you put a ring on the finger, and they can only be with me, and they can't be with anybody else. To me, I think
that I
if you
don't
love
agree with.
somebody, you don't
To
put
tell you the truth.
constraints. If you love somebody, you don't put constraints on them. If you're putting constraints on a person, that's slavery. That's ownership. That's property ownership. That's control. That doesn't sound like love to me.
I agree to a certain point, but
Well,
I want to maintain a certain level of natural selection where it should not just be a free for all where it's if you want it you get it. You have to have certain qualities and certain genetic traits that would ensure that if we do procreate, you're gonna. I don't want to use this word, but not everybody's at the same level. Everyone is not equal. I will maintain that. Everyone should be accepted equally, but each individual is not the same. It comes down to each person, how they want to evolve and how they want to train themselves to be a better asset to society. But just to say that you're there and you're human and you're the same as another guy that takes time and effort to improve himself, it's not the same. So when it comes down to natural
now wait a
selection,
minute. Now wait a minute though. You were talking a lot of lovey-dovey,
no,
woo ass shit earlier about like we're all one and let's all work together and
you
we're
have
all
an obligation
in
to
harmony.
accept everybody. However, everybody is not created equal. And now I'm not saying everyone doesn't have something to
So
offer.
everyone's equal, but not in the bedroom. Is that what you're saying?
Everyone, I'm going to ignore that comment completely. However, somebody may be greater at intellectuals and someone may be greater at mechanical skills just because they're not equal in the same way that I would not choose this person to go and do my taxes as opposed to fixing my car. So everyone is not equal in the same way is what I'm saying. Is everyone has their own individual characteristics, and depending on what it is you're looking for and what it is you want out of life, it shouldn't like if I want someone that can have intellectual conversation as opposed to a guy that can go out and hunt, it shouldn't be communal in a form that the guy that goes out and hunt, I don't want to be with him. I don't want him at all. So that's not the point, but I'm just making an example
Right.
here. Um, so I don't see how this communal thing would ever work. If someone has a plot of land and they issue me this acre, I'm gonna make sure this acre is upkept. But if we have a community that has 10 acres, I'm gonna say, okay, the next person's gonna do it, the next person's gonna do it, it's gonna go to crap. There has to be a certain level of ownership, not to a point where it's and when I say ownership, I know we want to go back to you saying person is your property, but there has to be a certain level of responsibility. Maybe that's a better word. So if you have
Right.
a community raising a child, will any of that person, unless you dictate to which person, okay, so you have a community raising a child, this person's going to teach them about personal hygiene, this person's going to teach them about, academics, unless you allocate that, it could easily fall through the cracks. So is that a risk that you can really take
Yeah.
with this communal aspect?
Yeah. No, no doubt. I mean, that's why I put the disclaimer that this is definitely some fucking far out, we're nowhere near that world, like maybe in some utopian future that'll happen. I get some evidence for the possibility of this kind of society from a book by author Christopher Ryan. It's called Sex at Dawn, and he basically talks about um, cultures, ancient cultures, tribes and cultures from very long time ago, who participated in these kind of communal societies where sex was shared. People did not. There wasn't this monogamy stuff. People kind of took part in orgies, and there wasn't this very delineated monogamous. I'm with her, you're with me for the rest of our lives, and that when we have kids, that kid is your and my kids, the mother and the father, and all the rest of the people who live around us in our region, they have nothing to do with our kids. They do not take care of our kids. They do not put any funds to our kids. Our kids is not their concern. This very individuated, spliced up, divided, divisive, really, way of living with people. And I think that um, to me, monogamy is a reflection of this division. That when human beings start to become divisive and they start to draw these lines in the sand where she's mine and we're together, but we're not with you, monogamy is a natural extension of that frame of mind. And then it creates the world we live in today, where we have very individuated lives, where I have my private property and my neighbor cannot walk into my property without my permission. Things are very strict and very fine-lined and defined. And I'm not saying that that's evil. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I think as long as it's voluntary and people are doing what they want to do and they're okay and they're happy, though arguably, as you said earlier, we might all very well just be slaves, modern-day slaves, working for corporate America, which corporate America to me is just a symptom of this divisiveness. So I think that I think if you were to get rid of that divisiveness of division between people, and that's them and I'm me, and we create these alliances with my family. You know, we have this idea that, you know, your genetic offspring is like your blood, but I mean, most of us, you know, our bloodline, I mean, that whole bloodline shit where this is my blood and my family matters more than a stranger on the side of the street, my bloodline, that bloodline stuff is very reminiscent of these royal Illuminati, you know, families that conspiracies talk about that rule the world, who thought their bloodline is so pure that they have to interbreed. I mean, that whole bloodline shit, the whole idea that you should love your genetic family, your genetic family more than a stranger on the side of the street. That's just silly to me, because you have in a sense we're all part of the same thing. I mean, if you want to take it back throughout the fucking history of the universe, didn't we all evolve from a single species? Didn't the entire universe come out of a single point, a Big Bang? I mean, we are literally all part of one thing, if you take the Big Bang's word for it. This idea that we're different or differentiated, I think that's a symptom of the elitism of our modern society, of the divisiveness, the hyper-competition. And my wonder is, what happens if we abolish that value? Because it's a value system we have to adopt. This divisiveness, this competitive divisiveness between yourself and others, that's a value you adopt and then you act out in your life. What happens if we choose to put that shit down? Is there an other way to value things and live our life where instead of being divisive, we actually love each other, really love each other, and we really care about each other? Is that possible, and what would the outcome be in terms, how would it be different from the current society we live in? That's my question.
We definitely, like you said, are not there yet. But it comes down to when you create a child and that's part of you, and you want it to go be communal. If you're faced with a situation to save only one, will you choose somebody else's child over your own? Um, I personally I can't see a communal society ever really existing without a certain level of ownership and tying. And as far as the bloodline, I mean, it's not just about blood. It's not just about DNA. Um, it's about just having a connection that I personally can't explain. I don't know what it is, to something that you've created, something that you've nurtured. And it's not that your child is not the same as somebody else's child from down the street, regardless if you live in a community and you help them, and it doesn't have to be. See, what I'm saying is that for me, it doesn't have to be my way or your way. There has to be a certain level of understanding, and it's all circumstantial to a point where no one will ever have the right answer. There's never going to be a perfect system. It's just going to have to be with given the facts that you're facing and the resources that you have. That's what's going to dictate the way that things should be. You can't say that we have a system where, okay, we're all going to take care of everyone's child. There's going to be favoritism over your own. Regardless, us as human beings is flawed. I don't think anybody would ever choose somebody else's child over their own. And then how do you deal with that?
Well, that's a good point. Well, let me just be clear. I'm not arguing for communism, just in case anybody who misinterprets what I'm saying. I'm not arguing for like communism, and because communism fails to address what you just mentioned, which is the nuances of the choices that people make and the situations that people. I'm not calling for some top-down governmental body that ensures that everybody is communal and acting in a communal way. I'm saying that is there a way that collectively, voluntarily, individuals can get to a point where they change their value system. You know, we've changed our value system where we don't like to, at least in the mainstream, people like to say that they're against war, or a lot of people say they're against war. You know, there's certain paradigm shifts in terms of what, you know, in terms of living in a better, more holistic, peaceful world. And there's paradigm shifts that people on a very large collective scale will adopt over time. And to what level can we take these paradigm shifts of inclusion and holism? You made a good point, though, about how there's favoritism. And it makes sense that if one man and one woman have sex and then the woman gives birth to a child, I mean, only she can nurture that child in the womb for 9 months. I mean, say what you want about living in a community and people working together, at the end of the day, only she and her womb and her body can go through the pregnancy aches, through the amount of energy drained from her, and even the intensive process of giving birth, which, even though I've heard that it doesn't have to be anywhere near as painful as we think it is, there's actually alternative ways for women to give birth through the vaginal canal that actually doesn't hurt, but that's a whole other fucking topic, or hurt as much.
Thank you for the graphic. I appreciate that.
Sorry, I apologize. So yeah, so there's a certain degree of favoritism among for a mother who gives birth to the child. So yeah, it seems to make sense that the mother would naturally want that. She would naturally get a sense that this is my child. I mean, my communal neighbor mother over there, she didn't give birth to my child, I did. So there is like a sense of ownership, or a sense of like, this is mine, not yours. I see where that's coming from. But maybe you just need to take a step back to the more holistic picture. This is getting a little abstract, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyways. You know, maybe although that woman did give birth to that child, maybe the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, that woman had to eat food to sustain herself and that child while she was, you know, going through the 9 months of pregnancy. But where did she get the food from? Where did the mother get the food from? Well, maybe she got the food because men and women, part of this localized community of people who care for each other, went out and cultivated life. So it's you can't really say that it's just your kid when everybody collectively played a role. You don't even have to live in this abstract, you know, fucking communal, everybody loves each other society today. I mean, the husband might be the one who makes the money and comes home and feeds the pregnant woman, but the husband goes to a job where he works with coworkers who help keep the company alive, which ensures that the husband makes money, which he then uses to buy food at the grocery store, food which was put on the shelves by local grocery clerks, food that was grown on a farm by a farmer, a faraway place. We're all working together as it is, but it's almost like we like to believe in the fairy tale that we're individual egos with our individual private property and my individual family, and I'm the king of my own castle, which reminds me again of the Illuminati bloodline worshippers, this royalty sense. And when you kind of look at what this individuated private property world we live in, this private property, I do my own thing, he does his own thing world that we live in, it kind of, it's like we're all like acting out little tyrannical fantasies. You know, we have this home, and the home is like your castle, and you're the ruler of your home. It's almost like everybody's just doing their best to have their own mini version. We're like mini tyrants. We want to have our own little mini versions of living like elitists. And it's so prominent in our culture. Everybody wants to have a BMW, all right? But they don't even buy the BMW. They just get it on a fucking lease. So you don't even own the car, but you pay a few $100s a month to afford a car you can't actually afford, also you can have the superficial sense that you're superior to others because you're chasing up to the elitist ideal of a fucking BMW, which is silly. So I think that there's this thread of hyper competitiveness in even the average everyday person, yourself included, myself included, that is really just a symptom of the elitism that you were condemning earlier. I really think and I still continue to find things to this day that are indicative of this kind of hyper competitive elitism. I don't think people are even aware of the still ingrained habits that if they became aware of, they might be like, wow, I can't believe I actually believe that. That's pretty fucked up.
I definitely agree with you, and it comes down to consumerism as well, to what certain points that you're making, and the fact that regardless of how aware we think we are, our subconscious is still being attacked by certain ideals coming from the top down, and you have to wonder if are you really that much of a conspiracy theorist to say they initially planted that and this is what they want, or sorry, piece fell out, or is it but what you're saying for one thing is about being the king of your domain. Is that not what everybody wants? Doesn't everybody want to be the best at what it is they're doing? It's human nature to a certain point. What you're saying is we would have to evolve to something above what we are, above humans. It'd have to be a superior species, and I think the way we are right now, it's absolutely impossible because we're flawed and we have these internal needs to be the best at whatever it is we're doing. Be it and of course, unfortunately, it's normally the fact that only our little homes that we can act out on these superior qualities. How many times have you heard your parents say, "This is my house, you can do what I want"? Are they not a tyrant? So it comes down to exactly what you're saying, but I understand the point you're trying to make. I just don't see how it would ever play out and how it would ever be perfect. You're making the point that even though a mother created that child, she wasn't able to create that child without the help of the community. And I agree with that completely. But there really is no right answer. I mean, I can't, it's not that I'm confused or anything. It's just I can't find a way to justify either side. Either side of being...
It's an evolutionary progress. It's an
So,
evolutionary process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's the same reason that, in spite of a hyper-competitive world, people still do things that represent unity and cooperation and love for others. People, even though we all compete, even though at the end of the day we all go back to our own individual homes with our own individual families where we place our own genetic offspring bloodline on a higher pedestal than a stranger, people still find the time and people still desire to do things like throw a birthday party where they invite everybody they know and they care about. They may not be people they live with, but the people they care about, extended family, friends, they invite them for a party on the weekend and everybody kind of just laughs and enjoys each other's presence. And you really, all these concerns about, I got to go to work tomorrow and I got to compete and I'm trying to make more money than my neighbor, that shit kind of goes out the window for a day as people are just kind of having fun. The divisiveness is kind of gone. We desire this end to divisiveness, but we live under a system that it won't allow us to do that. It just, we don't get rewarded. It's like I made this analogy before. If you live in a big city and you're in rush hour traffic in the morning, busting your ass driving to work, trying to get there on time, if you see somebody on the side of the street whose car broke down and they need someone to help, jump start their car, no, very few people on their way to work who are trying to make it on time are going to stop, pull over to help that person. They're not going to do it because if they help that person, it's a liability because they might end up being late to work. And their coworker who's in the same rush hour traffic in a separate car trying to get there before him, he might get there first, get a better punctuation mark, and get a raise, whereas the guy who pulled over to help the dude whose car wasn't starting, he might not get the raise. He might even lose his job if he's late to work. We live in a hyper-competitive world, and it's a liability to help others. Why is it a liability to care about other people? That's my question. Why is it a liability to care about other people? And is there a way to transcend that? Is there a way to move on past it? I think it is, but it would require a gradual process of a value shift happening. And I'm the first person to say that it's probably far off from now. It's going to take a long time, if it ever even does come. But we all show symptoms of desiring this greater unity, but we only take it so far. And I'm curious what happens when we take it all the way. That's my point. I don't know if you have anything else to say on that.
I do agree with your ideals of unity, and I also agree that if we ever do achieve this, it will completely counteract with the hidden agenda we have going on, which is why I feel that we have so many planted ways to de-unify us and separate us, and that's where we kind of have to rise up and be able to accept what's going on and acknowledge that, this whole thing with racism, this whole thing with feminism, it's all a way to separate us and push us farther away from this goal that it is you wanted to see us achieve. Perhaps it could have happened already. Oh, I highly doubt that, but I mean, we'd be a lot closer if we weren't constantly being bombarded with separation and competitiveness. And it also comes down to materialism and consumerism, where you have to get that BMW to make yourself look like the better person, and it's compete with your neighbor. If they buy a new car, you have to go buy a better car, and you have to be better than them. When you really it's all superficial. And until we come back to the basics and come back to what truly matters and love and being living the greater good of the world, feeding somebody that's hungry, and that's where we'll thrive. And I think that's what everyone's afraid of actually unifying us as opposed to separating us.
Yep. Right, and that will lead to an orgy communal society. I don't know. That's my prognosis of the situation.
Tell you what, let's place a bet and we'll see who comes out on top. Because
Exactly.
That has to be a conversation that we don't have to exactly put live. We can always have that at a different time. But I have certain ideals on that aren't exactly YouTube material, if for better words.
No, it's cool. I know it's abstract. It's a very far out there thing, and I actually, again, I actually get pretty good evidence for this from anybody who's listening who's interested. Maybe you're interested, from Christopher Ryan's book Sex at Dawn, and it talks about a lot of the evidence, historical evidence of ancient societies that used to live like this. Obviously, you think, oh, ancient societies. What do you want to go back to? Fucking, living out in the middle of nowhere in a jungle, fucking starving. Not necessarily. There's no reason. There's any reason you can't live in a civilized world with some of those old values that were beneficial. And not every one of these ancient societies had these values, but some did. And it's interesting. It's interesting evidence that there have been successful communities of people who lived with much fewer boundaries and division, much less division between the people that they lived with. Let's see what else I was going to say. I sort of lost my train of thought, but anyways, I think we have run this conversation to the ground. I think we've talked for long enough. I don't know. I think it's been like an hour and a half or something like that.
I think it's coming up to 2 hours now.
Yeah, it's craziness. All right. Well, yeah, this was a very good conversation. I think people enjoyed it. Hopefully, let's see. Well, I'll definitely find out if there's any straight up like racist people in the audience. I'll definitely figure that out by the end of tonight.
I mean, I hope that we never really crossed the line of racism. There were many points that They just have to be addressed to a certain point. And I mean, the goal was not to offend anybody. And if you are offended, then I think you need to figure out a way to not be
Yeah.
offended in the future.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. My intent was definitely not to offend anybody. Um, I'm not talking about blacks because I fucking hate blacks or anything like that. I don't. I'm discussing this because I really do think it's interesting. There really is a sort of a civil war going on, in the words of Chris Rock, in the black community, and I think it's fascinating because it seems to me to debunk all these racist claims. When you have successful black people moving up and becoming independent and empowered, and you got other blacks saying that they're sellouts or coons or whatever, I think that's silly. But anyways, Jessica, thanks a lot. I don't know, maybe if you have, I don't know if you have a website, or maybe you want to plug your Twitter, or maybe you don't want to do any of that. But if you want to, go ahead and do it now.
No, I think I'm good. I'll pop up whenever I see necessary. So.
Okay, and I apologize for whatever that comment was. I don't know what comment you saw on the YouTube, under the YouTube video. Somebody left like a obscene comment. I don't know what it was yet. I guess I'll find out when I check it. I
It's
apologize.
Okay. It's perfectly okay. When you
What
do
was
these kind
it?
of things,
Was it?
I don't remember. Yeah.
Was it like a perverted? Was it like
No,
a
no, definitely. I mean, I'm not
perverted
offended at all.
comment or insult?
No, it's fine.
Okay, good. All right,
We're all
whoever
good.
that was, you're a piece of shit. All right, Jessica, very good
Hold on.
conversation, and we'll keep in
As a
touch.
feminist, I should be
Yeah,
opposed to that. You shouldn't be able to stick up for me if I was a feminist. That should be my job. I
you're
should be
right
able.
because you're an
You,
empowered woman who doesn't need a
any
filthy
man.
man to. All right, Jessica, very nice
Okay.
talking. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.